My name is Adonya. I am an IFBB pro in the wellness division. A little about me. I'm born and raised in Minnesota, and I've been a part of sports all my life. I ran track. I did a little bit of gymnastics. I also competed in Olympic weightlifting when I was in high school, and I ran track up until college. And I've always been a very competitive person, a very athletic person. So doing bodybuilding is very much like it just makes sense for me.
What got you into weightlifting?
Yeah, so I think for me it was when I was in high school and I was running track, and we would go to the weight room a couple times a week. And I really liked that time when we were off the track and we were in the weight room. I loved working on my strength. I loved working on like my squats, my bench. And the other track girlies, they weren't really like interested. They liked the track, obviously the running, right? And I love that part too. And so the person who was doing our programming for our weightlifting regimen, he was an Olympic weightlifter, and he also taught that as well. So I ended up doing like Olympic weightlifting with him towards like the end of my high school career. Like I think it was my senior year I did it. I think that working out and exercise and being in the weight room, being in like the gym is like very therapeutic for me. And I didn't realize I was using it for like therapy until like very recently. Like I was that person in college who would go to the gym before classes, and I had 8 a.m.s. And it just like helped me feel better. I was that person when I was just, feeling like just bored or something, I would go to the gym. So it was very much that. But on the flip side, I have always been in sports. And, with sports, you do compete during that time. So I liked practicing for something. And then I like looking forward to a day where I'm going to show what I've been working on. So it's just kind of like there's like two sides for me with working out and things like that.
In a similar way, I was going, working out before class and then going after class and maybe playing basketball, like just really using the gym as kind of just like my gateway really into, I guess, my own college experience.
I really like that. Yeah. And I feel like that's like, yeah, I feel like that's really good because, you could have just went back to your dorm and like not did anything, but you kind of challenged yourself and got uncomfortable and went to the gym and, saw people and allow people to like see you. And it's like, okay, going to the gym is actually a very vulnerable experience. Like people don't understand. So I really respect people who go to the gym. Like it's a lot that goes into it.
So what led you into actually the bodybuilding route?
Okay, so I have always been interested in bodybuilding, but so when I was in college, I was like, ooh, that looks really fun to train for something and to step on stage and to show, present your physique. But I didn't really know how it really worked. And I was still like just in college, I was still competing in track and things like that. So I was like, yeah, it was like a thought. And then once I graduated from college, in 2020 during the pandemic. And then everything happened with that. And then things started getting kind of like more normal in 2021. I started going to the gym more often when gyms would open back up. And I would just, be there like every day because it was like very much therapy for me. And I know how to work on my own physique. I mean, I've been in sports all my life. I know how to work on strength and things like that. So I was doing it on my own. And then there would be like some people in the gym who were bodybuilders who would tell me like, you might do good at this. You should try doing bodybuilding. I'm like, yeah, thanks, but it looks cool, but not for me. And then I think for me, it was just betting on myself, which is something that I'm trying to like get more used to and comfortable doing. I think I was thinking about what could happen in the negative way, but I wasn't thinking about what could happen in a positive way. So at one point I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna put all my bets in myself. I'm just gonna do it. And I didn't know what was gonna happen. I signed up for a coach, and it kind of like went on from there. So yeah, there's not really like a good answer, but that's kind of how it happened.
That's an interesting thing you said about kind of thinking only about what the negatives could be.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think so too. I think that it's like a muscle. You have to like keep on practicing that. You have to think about when the negative thoughts come in, you have to really try to think about the positives. And it's like work. And I'm just so glad I pushed myself. And a lot of good things did come from it. So it was just so good.
So when you got into actually decided you're going to do it, how did you actually take that first step?
Yeah, there was a lot of research. What I did was I went on the NPC News Online website and there was an ad for a coach that like popped up. And so I clicked on it and I literally just put my information in the little questionnaire thing. And then they gave me a call and I told them what I wanted to do and what I already knew what show I wanted to compete in because it was like a close one here in Minnesota. So I told her I want to compete in July. Like, am I gonna be able to be prepped, and ready to go? And she's like, yes. And so we kind of got started. And as I was starting my prep and things like that, I was learning new things about bodybuilding that I still didn't really know about. And I was like meeting new people in the area who were bodybuilders too. So that was really cool. And I think it's just like such a good thing for me at that time to just really focus on that one thing and just focus on prepping for my show.
What were you hoping to kind of get out of that experience at the beginning? What were your thoughts of like, oh, this is the reason kind of why I want to do it? Was it for the sport, like the winning of it? Was it for the physique? What was it kind of for you?
Okay, that's a good question. Because okay, so with track, I studied abroad in Brazil my first semester, my senior year. So I didn't compete in my track season indoors. And then the year before that, I don't think I competed in outdoor because I pulled my hamstring. So I wasn't competing for a long time. And like I told you, I'm a very competitive person. So I wasn't able to really get that experience of like training for something and then, having that day to shine and show my skills. So it had been like a very long time since I did that. And I was like going to the gym every day and I was, feeling good about the way I was looking, but it was kind of getting boring. So I think when I started doing the bodybuilding, I was like, okay, it kind of lit a little fire in me again. I was like able to go into the gym. I had a plan. I knew that I needed to work on, these exercises and stuff like that for my show in July. And so I think that I was concerned about like my physique. I wanted to create the best physique that I could create, but I also just wanted to get back to my old self of like being a competitive person and working on a goal and just continue doing that on a daily basis.
When it comes to science-backed supplements that taste great, 2NS is your one-stop shop. They truly maximize quality by making their own supplements in-house. With over a combined 90 years of experience, 2NS's team of industry experts has a commitment to research, quality, development, and innovation. The body is sacred, so give it the best. Check out all 2NS has to offer at secondnaturesupplements.com. That's 2ndnaturesupplements.com.
When you got into that first prep, kind of tell us a little bit about that experience.
That's a good question. And I've been thinking about that lately because I'm just like, okay, what happened? Sometimes when things happen, you're like, okay, whoa, what just happened? So for me, I think it was challenging in like the food department. I'm really good about working out. I mean, I was working out every day before I even started prep, so it wasn't hard for me. But and I'm used to pushing myself in the gym physically, so that wasn't hard. But the food part, I learned a lot about myself with like my eating habits and my relationship with food. I realized that like I was kind of like an undereater. Like I didn't like not like eat a lot, but I just like basically would not eat enough. And I did not realize that. So when I was given, my macros and she was like, you need to eat this much food, I was like, this is a lot of food. So my body had to get used to that. And I think like just like the mindset shift of prepping for a show and like what bodybuilding and just kind of what this lifestyle is about.
Gotcha.
It's a little different. It's a little different than like with like competing for track and things like that. I mean, like with track, like you're running, you're like actually doing something. I don't know how to explain. So with bodybuilding, you're in the weight room and you're working out, and then you kind of like pose on stage. You're not really doing anything physically, taxing. Okay, but posing is actually really a lot of work. But so it was just like it's a different type of like experience, basically.
Yeah, it seems like with other sports, whether that be running or basketball, football, baseball, it can kind of almost like it can be a lot more about that day, like on the day of competing. Whereas with bodybuilding, there's a lot that goes into that day and it's important, but it's I don't know percentage, but let's just say it's 95% what you do, leading up to whereas in basketball, maybe you just have an off, shooting day or, the other team just really hot and they they shouldn't beat you and they're not even, ranked or whatever, and they come out and it's the upset. But in bodybuilding, it seems like you don't know who the winners are going to be per se, but you know who they're not going to be.
Right. Because it's like a very much like a subjective sport, whereas like track and like basketball, that's very much about like your skills and how you perform that day. And whereas like bodybuilding is about what the judges are liking that day. And it could be you, it cannot be you. So
yeah. And did that ever, was that kind of a hard pill to swallow for you?
I think so, because it's like with bodybuilding, it brings out the best of me with like being competitive and things like that, but it also brings out the worst in me. It brings out like my perfectionism, it brings out like I'm just like super hard on myself. So, bodybuilding does not make that easy. It kind of feeds more into that stuff, right? So it's like, okay, I'm trying to be perfect, which is not a real thing, but with bodybuilding, you want to try to be as perfect as possible with how you're creating your physique and building your physique.
Was there any time for you where you thought to yourself, maybe this isn't for me?
Yes, because this is the thing. With social media, it's just a crazy thing. With social media, people are showing their best, including myself. And sometimes like when you're not in the right state of mind, you think that that's normal and that's like the standard. And I think I'll compare myself a lot to like seasoned pro bodybuilders. And I look back now and I'm just like, wow, I was so mean to myself. But like in my head back then, I was like, this is what I want to look like and I need to look like this. And I literally was just getting started. So it was just kind of crazy how I was comparing myself to people who have gone through several preps and, are doing a lot of different things. So, yeah.
It's like it becomes the standard, even though it's really not, even though it's really such this like 0.01% of the population. Exactly. We become, programmed to think that that's like what everybody's looking like that. Everybody does this. Everybody does that. I think that's social media in a nutshell is like, it makes us think that everybody's living this lavish lifestyle. Everybody looks beautiful. Everybody, is never unhappy. And it's kind of a trap to fall into that.
It's just like so not realistic. And like once you're like outside of that mindset, you're like, yeah, that's not real. But when you're like in it, and all you're thinking about, like, oh, this is like real, then it's like hard to kind of get out of it. But I was also going to mention what you said. I think that for me, I had to also think about how everyone is different. And what someone has, I might not have. What I have, someone might not have. And I think I think bodybuilding made me focus more on myself and help me love myself more and appreciate my body way more than others.
I think that's a good point too. Like, these people who are, super successful or maybe have a lot of followers or whatever kind of way you want to measure that, they kind of capitalize on what they do well. And if we're trying to capitalize on things that we may not have as much, potential in, then we can't ever get to the point where we want to be. But if like you said, we can figure out what our strong points are and work on those, even if they're not like the hot commodity at this exact second, then we can, show people how working on yourself and going and being kind of authentic to what your strong points are. Not saying you shouldn't work on, your weak points, but if you can capitalize on those strong points and not worry about what other people are capitalizing on, you'll get to a similar position of not necessarily, 50 million followers, but happy with yourself, successful in whatever you're trying to do and kind of make your own mark in your own way.
Oh my gosh. Yes. 100%. I really love that because I think that like someone like, I think a lot of people, we're really hard on ourselves and we only focus on the negative parts of ourselves. And it's like, once we shift our minds and think about like what we're actually really good at and focus on that more, I think that, it's just a better experience. And like you said, it's okay to want to work on your, your downfalls. Cause no one's perfect. So it's good to do that too. But you should also allow yourself to think about what's good about you and focus on that and like grow upon that stuff too.
Ready to take your supplements to the next level? 2NS is here to help. 2NS strives to help you attain the highest degree of health and performance. Combining cutting-edge science and the best from nature, 2NS gives fitness enthusiasts and athletes the fuel they need. Check them out at secondnaturesupplements.com. That's 2ndnaturesupplements.com. This episode is brought to you by Move Your Body Apparel, a Lexington-based, community-ran premium activewear brand that promotes the importance of daily movement. For the rest of the year, MYB is donating a percentage of every order to the Special Olympics of Kentucky. Save 20% off your first order with the link below or use code TWR20 online at mybapparel.com.
So after your first show was over, how did you kind of feel about that experience? You know, what were those emotions you were experiencing? Was it something you thought, hey, this is something I'm in for the long haul, or, you know, this was a great experience, but we'll see what happens? Like, what was it like for you?
Okay, this is such a good question because, yeah, after my first show, I was on such a high. Like, I don't know how to explain it. It was the best feeling ever. I mean, I was on cloud 18. It was just like, I mean, you know, you're doing something scary. You did it. Like, you got on stage, you know, you didn't die. So you're feeling like freaking superwoman. And then, you know, I placed really well, which I'm really happy about. And so then now you're getting external validation, which at the end of the day, it feels good. You know what I mean? Like, we're human, you know, they say not to focus on that, but I mean, it feels good when people are messaging you, they're coming up to you, good job, you look really good. And it just makes you think about how all the hard work that you put in is really coming to fruition. So I was on a high. I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. And it was great. It wasn't until like the next 3 days when things started getting quiet. So, you know, all the congratulations and all the good jobs were pretty much done. Everybody saw it and it's pretty much over. And then I got this really weird feeling of like a low. And it was like a low of like, what's next? And like, I feel like I need to do more. And I wasn't thinking about how what I just did was still really great. I kind of was like, okay, that's over. And I wasn't like basking in like seriously my hard work that I put in and like how great I did that day. I was like, okay, next. And I kind of threw it away. And it's just like kind of is sad how like I did that. And so then I thought about how I really do think I want to compete again, but I was nervous. And my coach, she really encouraged me to compete in my first national show 8 weeks after my first regional show. So I competed at this show called Twin Cities Open in Minnesota, and then I competed at North Americans in Pittsburgh.
Do you think that that's like maybe like a survival instinct too, to like not think about your last victory forever, you know, because you have to obviously, you know, go get that next meal. You have to go get, you know, that money for next month's rent. You know, if you think about how great, obviously you want to remember it in a good way, and you don't want to just like throw it away as a success. You'll hear that from bodybuilders all the time, that post-show blues.
Yes. And I was like, I heard about it. I was like, what is that? I didn't really like think too much about it because I mean, I was too busy prepping and focusing on like my workouts and meals. But wow, thank you for sharing that, because I think that like you understand what I was saying. And I was like, when you were talking to me about that, I was like, yes, that's exactly what it was. It's like a bit of a survival thing. You're like, okay, what's next? Now I gotta like figure out what I gotta do again. I think it's because, you know, we get so used to this routine that when the next day comes after the competition, the routine, like, I mean, you don't do it. And it's like the first day that you don't do it, it's like, whoa, that feels weird. And you kind of want to get back to, because that's what you're used to. That's familiar. So I literally took 2 weeks off before I started prepping for my national show. And it felt weird. I felt lame. I felt like I wasn't doing enough. But my coaches, they were like, you need to relax. Like, you need to chill so that you can get ready to your next prep. It's going to be a different experience. And I was going to mention also another thing. I think that when you do a competition, so you train really hard for something, and you have that one day where you're doing really great, you kind of like chase that high. You want to keep on chasing that high. So I think that was kind of what I was doing when I wanted to do the national show. I was like, I want to feel that again. I want to feel amazing again. So
You mentioned kind of like having those 2 weeks. I remember right after I did 75 hard that next day, I felt like guilty for not doing those things. It was such a weird sensation. I never had it before and haven't had it since. okay, I didn't wake up and like do my normal routine of like reading and then going for a walk and doing all these other things. And then I didn't, when I got home later at night, I didn't read again and I didn't worry about these other things you have to do. And it was just like this sense of guilt mixed with like confusion. Like what
Yes.
am I supposed to fill my time with? Like you said, it's just you
Yeah.
have this routine and then suddenly it's gone away.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And I bet yeah, with 75 hard, like you get in so much of a routine of doing one thing, a certain thing. And I feel like yeah, that day after, you're like, okay, wait, what should I do?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. How do you try to match that first experience?
I feel like for me, the second time was definitely like elevated by like by like 10%, just because it was a national show. So, and I'm also traveling for this show. I had to travel to Pittsburgh, you know, there's people from United States, Canada, and Mexico at this show. Whereas like before I was like at a regional show in Minnesota, like I mean, very amazing show for a regional show. But it was like I think for me, like it was even like another level of like, wow, like this is crazy. And I think for me, like everything was just happening so fast that I wasn't really able to like really process everything for the second time. So I didn't really get to feel that excitement like I did my first time, because like my first time I was like it took a while for me to prep, and then I got to the show. I mean, it was like very a smooth transition, whereas like my second one, it was like a lot going on, traveling and all that puts a lot of more stressors on things. And I think like my first time, I didn't have really huge expectations of myself. I was like, you know what, just go out there. You've been prepping for this long, it's your first time, no expectations. But since I already had my first time doing a show, I was putting a lot of expectations on myself. I was like, you gotta do this better, you gotta do that better. You need to, and so it just kind of made the experience a little bit more pressure for sure.
What has been maybe your experience with like your favorite show?
Okay, because I mean, I feel like I'm still a baby to like competing because I've only competed twice. But I like this question because like the first show was very different from the second show. So for me, I honestly liked the competition of the national show. Like it was more competition. You can look around, you're like, okay, we're about to go out there and fight, like it's gonna be a good experience with that. And I think that for me, my competitive side is saying that I like the national show because it's more competition. My side of like thinking about someone who's starting out bodybuilding and competing for the first time, that regional show was such a great experience. It was like such just like I will always look back and think about my first time competing, that regional show, everything that happened leading up to it, athlete check-ins and checking into the hotel, all the things. Like that was such a beautiful experience that I will always have for the rest of my life. So
And how was your training, your recovery, diet? How was that kind of become more optimized for you?
that's a good question. Okay, because my first prep, I was really just all in. I mean, I just kind of put all my attention into bodybuilding. I sacrificed a lot of time with my family and friends. I didn't really do much. I mean, I really only focused on training at the gym, my meals, prepping my meals, making sure I had everything for that. And I kind of like didn't do anything outside of that. And a lot of my friends, family, they'll tell you that they didn't see me for a lot of months. And it's like, that's okay. And that's something that I think I needed. But I don't think that that's, gonna be able to work for the rest of my life. I can't just shut out the whole world and just prep. So my second time around, I was a little bit more able to communicate. And I think that for me, just knowing that I looked at training and my meals as like a job, kind of like I was just super disciplined. I knew I had to get it done. And once I got that done, I can do other things. And I was allowing myself to like, okay, you can still be a regular person and talk to your family and friends and do things because, life is still happening. You have this huge goal that you want to make sure you put a lot of time and effort into. So it's like balancing that for sure. I think that's one thing that I was, I'm going to say healing from my first prep. Like I look back at those first, 6 months of the year and I was like, whoa, I really like shut out the world. And it was like kind of crazy. And I felt guilty. I felt like a bad friend, a bad sister, a bad daughter, a bad, person, because I didn't really talk to other people. But when I talked to my family and friends, they were like, Adonya, we knew that you were really focused on something and that you're really passionate about your goal. So they made me feel better about it. But I just felt like a bad person. But I think I really needed that. But I mean, I was like healing from just not being. I'm someone that like I always check up on my friends, on my family members, and I wasn't doing that for a while, and it just kind of felt like opposite of who I really am.
What do you see this sport like? What is it to you? Is it something to do like a I don't want to say a hobby in a way because I feel like it's sometimes even more than that,
Yeah.
even if it's not like all that you do. But is it something that's like a hobby more, or is it something that's like I want to like see how far this thing can actually take me, and we're going to make like all these sacrifices and all this effort into it because I want to get to that Olympia stage, or I want to win the Olympia or whatever. Like, is it more for the experience of it, or is it more for like the victory and the success of it?
That's a good question. I've been thinking about that recently with being in my off season, in my previous season. I'm like, what do I want to be in bodybuilding? What do I want bodybuilding to be to me? So there's two answers. So with my competitive side and with when I start something, I really like to finish it. So for me, I really like I have dreams about myself being on the Olympia stage. So I know that I'm going to Olympia stage and that's my goal. And I think about that like on a daily basis. With wanting to be on the Olympia stage, I know that I have to compete also in the pro league, which I'll be having my pro debut sometime in the winter or spring of next year. And so I've been thinking about that. Okay, so but with that though, I mean, yeah, you can think about competition day, think about the final stages of like, your prep. But I'm thinking a lot about like during this time now until next spring. And I really want to um use bodybuilding to like uplift myself in a way, if that makes sense. So I want to continue to work out and build my physique. I want to continue to learn about the body and nutrition, exercising, stuff like that. And I want to give back to other people. And I'm just trying to figure out what that looks like for me. I talk to a lot of people on social media, and that's something that really like that really helps me out. It really inspires me when I talk to people online and I share my workouts and there's talking about my workouts, my exercises. I like that experience. So I think I'm just trying to figure out how I can use bodybuilding to uplift myself right now.
This podcast is sponsored by Smoking Gun Coffee, a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to give back to those in need. Don't forget to use code TWR10 for a 10% discount at checkout. This episode is brought to you by Move Your Body Apparel, a Lexington-based, community-ran premium activewear brand that promotes the importance of daily movement. For the rest of the year, MYB is donating a percentage of every order to the Special Olympics of Kentucky. Save 20% off your first order with the link below or use code TWR20 online at mybapparel.com.
In some ways, it feels like the competition side, it's not secondary, but it feels like it's almost like it's also there, and then there's these other things too.
Exactly. The competition side is like 10% of like, for me, of like what I like really want to do. For me, it's about like that everyday, like going in to the gym. It's about like that mindset. It's about having huge goals and sticking with them. Because, a lot of times in my past, I've had really big goals and I get nervous and I just kind of like don't, continue to work on them. But this one I really stuck to, and I just really want to continue sticking with it.
I feel like an exciting time to like right before you take that stage to almost like set the tone for the rest of the time in the sport.
Oh, I really like how you mentioned that because that's how I'm feeling right now. I'm feeling like I'm like back at like square one because I am, but it's like I also want to practice not forgetting what I have already accomplished. And I was actually at home and I saw my IFBB Pro card, and it just brought back so many memories. And I was like, yes, it's a piece of paper, but it really does symbolize all the work that I put in, what I've accomplished, and it's never going to be forgotten. And it's actually helping me in this next stage of my life with bodybuilding and prepping and in my improvement season. But it's like I am kind of at like square one again, where I'm feeling like I'm starting from like the bottom, and I have to climb up to where I want to be.
And do
And
you
that can be
have
quite mentally hard sometimes.
and do you have kind of like a plan as far as like 5 year, 3 year plan? Like this is what I want to, achieve in these next couple of years in this sport.
I do, but I feel like it's like unrealistic. So my goal is to have my pro debut in the winter, spring of next year. And I want to place obviously top five. That's what I want to do. And then I want to sign up or like apply for the Arnold. And hopefully I could do that in March of 2024. And then hopefully I do that. And then maybe have another pro show in between that. And then hopefully I can also do the Olympia in the end of 2024. That's the goal. That's like the skeletal outline. But obviously, and I'm okay with change. But that's kind of what I was thinking about.
It's important, I think, to have sometimes a very, very lofty goal that some people might look at and think is crazy. I think it just pushes you to do to do that, the average things that you would do, just to do them maybe a little bit more aggressively, put a little bit more effort into them, because even if you don't reach the Olympia stage by 2024, maybe you work so hard that you reach it the next year. Whereas if you said, I want to reach it in 2026, maybe it would take you until 2030. So it's like, if you push yourself harder, a lot of times maybe you don't get there, but you get there at more of an accelerated rate anyway.
Absolutely. And I noticed like that's happened in my life before. And yeah. And I think there's like a quote about like, if your goals don't scare you, like, I mean, what are you doing? Right. So it's like, that's why I was kind of nervous to say it, but I'm like, I'm going to say it. I want to go to Olympia in 2024. So, we'll see. And I'm going to continue to work on it. And yeah, I agree.
That'd be awesome to, and have you back on, right. But before your prep would start for that, that'd be kind of cool to do too.
Yes, I'm so excited. That'll be so much fun. I was gonna ask you a question. So I did notice that you do like to interview like mostly bodybuilders. Is that something do you like I think like the sport, or what is it kind of about bodybuilders?
So to me, actually, I was influenced into fitness through Arnold Schwarzenegger. So I would go back and watch kind of like the what was that documentary? What was it?
Pumping Iron.
Yeah, I would go back and kind of watch that, like, just time after time after time, and I would just kind of get motivated and get inspired, and it would push me. And I read, the bodybuilding encyclopedia, and I read his autobiography or whatever. And so I just got really inspired by him, and then kind of by the sport a little bit too. And that kind of led me into fitness and then into exercise science. So once I started the podcast, I kind of got talking to people, and then I can't remember. I'm trying to remember who it was. It was somebody here locally in Louisville, and it was a bodybuilder here, and they were talking about a show that was coming up in Kentucky, and it was last April. And so since then, since probably a month or two before that, I just started talking to more people in bodybuilding from here, kind of getting connected to the community. And then since then, we went with the podcast to Houston for summer shredding and talked to kind of some like influencer bodybuilders there. And then since it's just been talking to more bodybuilders, and lucky enough to talk to people that are going to be on the Olympia stage this year. And it's just been really pretty crazy.
Wow, I really like that. I thank you for sharing that with me. So it really did start with like the inspiration of Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I definitely am inspired by him too. When I watched the documentary, I just really like his mindset. Really shines through that documentary because he really shows us like what it means to be a bodybuilder. And outside looking in, it can look kind of crazy, but when you're like in it, you understand what he's saying, and you understand like why he's like so focused. Oh, I love the documentary, and he really is like very open with us in that documentary. And I also like how you create a community, because with bodybuilding, it can be very lonely. because you're focusing on yourself and you need to focus on your own physique so you can get to the stage on your own. It's not a team thing. It's very much like of an individual thing. Yeah, you have your coaches and stuff, but that's pretty much it. So having a community and me following you on Instagram, like it really helps with like feeling like I'm a part of something bigger than like just myself.
It's really cool that you actually mentioned that. And, I'm glad that it's coming off that way.
Yes, no, thank you. Seriously.
I really appreciate you coming on. That was really good getting to talk to you today. And, best of luck in the next couple months with getting ready for your pro debut.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, Daniel. Have a good day.
You do the same.
Anything do you need from me or we're good to go?
Well, if you want to share your social medias before we head out, you can do that.
Okay, yeah. So Instagram is I'm probably gonna change it soon, but the handle is Only Gains by AG. So that's Instagram for you guys. So definitely follow me. I try to post, but sometimes I get distracted. I like to share my journey, but it's hard and it takes practice. And some people are really good at doing that. That's why people are influencers because they're really good at sharing their journey and things like that. And for me, I think I'm a little bit more reserved. I think I just do the work and I just do it. I don't really share too much. And I do tend to just show the end result, which I don't want to do. I want to show the things that go into what the end result. And so that's actually a really interesting topic for sure.